أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي رب زدني علما. My brothers and sisters, I hope you're well and you're watching as the events around the world is unfolding, especially in Afghanistan. A lot of you have written to me, asked me, can I explain Islamic perspective on what's going on in Afghanistan? I have waited for the last couple of weeks of observing what's going on the ground. And I think it's important that we give you an insight about what's going on in Afghanistan so we can all understand what it is that is happening and what is our obligation when we have a crisis like this. Afghanistan is a very important country, strategically, geopolitically, and definitely for Islamic civilization. They've given to this world numerous amazing Muslim scholars, Islamic scholars, scientists, inventors, military generals, celebrated individuals. Afghanistan has a breathtaking history for its contribution to Islam and the Muslim world. It's a country landlocked with no sea border for it and sandwiched between many countries. It's bordering China, it borders Pakistan, India, Uzbekistan, and even maybe a small corridor to Russia. 5 countries all around. For my living memory, for as long as I have lived, I've only seen conflict in Afghanistan. I am now 50. And I have not seen anything but conflict. I have not seen peace in that land. And throughout history, various emperors, various superpowers have tried to invade Afghanistan and take it over. But all of them have failed. No superpower has ever conquered Afghanistan truly. In fact, it is said that Afghanistan has been the deathbed for many superpowers in the world. Whoever attempted to attack and invade Afghanistan eventually collapsed. And we saw that in our living memory with the former Soviet Union collapsing and crumbling from within after its invasion and its failed, awful massacres as well as failed attempt to occupy. After the Russians were driven out of Afghanistan, the Afghani people started fighting between themselves in warlords, in tribal areas. Different people declared their own power and their own army. There was awful, constant fight and constant massacre going on between different tribes. At the back of it all, if not small number, millions actually, were displaced, and many of them moved to Pakistan. Some of those people in Pakistan decided to organize themselves, called themselves Taliban in 1996, and march into Afghanistan to cleanse Afghanistan from tribal wars, and very quickly took over the country. I'm giving you a very quick history of what happened. And they were ruling Afghanistan using their tribal laws, twisted understanding of Islam, often very barbaric in their interpretation, very backward interpretation of texts of the Quran and the Sunnah, banning television, burning videotapes, enforcing people for having a particular shape and the size of a beard, clothes, things that play very little role in Islamic legal system were being introduced as important in Afghanistan. Islamic law was being introduced and implemented without any sophistication, understanding, or context. At the back of it all, those people who were helping the Afghani people fight the Russians when they invaded Afghanistan in the 70s, they happened to be people from Afghanistan and from all over the world. People from all over the world went to free Afghanistan from Russian invasion. At that time, Britain, America, France, Germany, most of Europe, in fact the whole world, funded and celebrated anyone who went and became a mujahideen. Funded and celebrated who became a mujahideen in Afghanistan to fight the Russians. Because for the West, Europe, America, Australia, Canada, for the West, their enemy was Russia. If Muslims are going to gather together and declare jihad against their enemy, we'll support the Muslims. That was the mantra. In fact, in Afghanistan, CIA, that's American Intelligence Services, set up more than 45 training camps to train mujahideens in Afghanistan. Funded by CIA, trained by CIA, weaponed by CIA, and present in the camps, leading lights of CIA, to make sure the mujahideens are well trained to fight the Russian army. Saudi Arabia, Pakistan, UAE, many Muslim countries were throwing millions of dollars in Afghanistan to free Afghanistan from Russian invasion. We in the UK, I remember when I was 18, 19, I used to march in Trafalgar Square, in front of Downing Street, in front of Russian embassy, every week, doesn't matter what day, what the weather was, calling for end of invasion of Afghanistan, out, Russians should be out of Afghanistan. We all joined in, it was a good thing to do, and the world was together for it. However, when the Russians went, and the Afghanis had weapons in their hands, many of these camps had foreign soldiers with weapons, no government, no system, tribal wars were going on. Taliban swept into power and they brought some stability in the country, but because Taliban themselves had no knowledge of Islam complete, they had no sophisticated understanding of politics, they'd never been in politics, they've never done one day of politics, they don't even know how to run a government, never mind government, they don't even know how to run a village. They don't know how to run economy, they don't know how to run trade, commerce, foreign affairs, no knowledge whatsoever. Half-baked, half-educated people from refugee camps in Afghanistan who had learned little of Islam became the rulers of Afghanistan. And they were now implementing Sharia. Sharia requires qualified people to be able to implement it. So Afghanistan was a big mess. In the meantime, those foreign fighters who had come from different countries were still in Afghanistan, they didn't go back to their own countries. Al-Qaeda came up. And Al-Qaeda is a name that we know, very familiar with. It was led by somebody called Bin Laden. Bin Laden actually comes from Saudi Arabia. He was sent from Saudi Arabia, he volunteered all his wealth and his family's money to fight for the Afghani people to free Afghanistan from the Russians, the same as everybody else. Bin Laden family today is the biggest construction cleaning company in Saudi Arabia even today. If you go to Saudi Arabia, go to Umrah and Hajj, you will see Bin Laden and Co. Many trucks driving around, those who are cleaning Haram, they will have Bin Laden and Co. written. It's the same family. It's one of their sons called Bin Laden. Osama Bin Laden, he was a civil engineer. He got bored of Saudi Arabia. He took family money and they supported him when he came to Afghanistan, and he brought with him hundreds of bulldozers and those trucks with which you destroy and flatten land, bulldozers, right? He bought hundreds of them. And he was just going around flattening Russian military camps. He was a very successful fighter on the ground. He was in Afghanistan at that time. And then 9/11 happened. The Twin Towers in America were destroyed. And George Bush was the president of America. He decided that 9/11 happened, and the evidence is pointing out that it was Al-Qaeda responsible for it, and Al-Qaeda was in Afghanistan, so we need to kill the leaders of Afghanistan, leaders of Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan, and therefore George Bush sent in troops in order to kill Osama bin Laden in Afghanistan. America did give Afghanistan a choice, saying, why don't you give Osama bin Laden, this is the only man we want, then we want to engage. Afghani people said, no, we're not giving him. Taliban said, we're not giving Osama bin Laden to you, he's our guest, we're going to protect him. So a fight ensued, America came in 2001. 2021, brothers and sisters, 20 years later, this is what happened. And I want to tell you exactly what happened 20 years later. $2 trillion has been spent. $2 trillion has been spent in Afghanistan in the last 20 years. Do you know where the money has gone? Let me give you. $10 billion has gone on fighting drugs in Afghanistan. Fighting drugs in Afghanistan. Unfortunately, Afghanistan supplies, even today, 80% of world's opium drugs. 80%. But do you know, when Taliban came to power, they reduced it to less than 5% within the first 4 years of their rule. So they were successful in almost wiping out opium trade. But since America invaded and spent $10 billion in fighting drugs, guess what's happened? The drugs production has doubled since 2001. $10 billion later, 20 years later, drugs production in Afghanistan has doubled. Number two, they've spent $87 billion to train Afghan police and army. They've trained Afghan police and army 87 billion pounds. But when Taliban walked into Afghanistan the other day, in 11 days they took over the whole country. Where were this army and the police officers and security services who have been trained with $87 billion? It should be very strong. In fact, Biden said recently that these guys are 300,000 strong soldiers we've trained in Afghanistan. All of them disappeared. Do you know why? Because Afghanis had no interest in continuing supporting America. Americans came on the ground using their firepower, their air power, their guns and their bullets. They came in like a cowboy marching into somebody else's land and taking it and enforcing. Afghanis were there, yes. They were trained by the Americans, yes, some of them, but they're not really interested in resisting Taliban and causing another bloodbath, so they just disappeared. 87 billion pounds was spent in training Afghan police and army. The vast majority of that money has been spent, by the way, not on Afghani soldiers or police officers, has been spent on trainers, the American trainers, the British trainers, the experts who went and trained the police officers. They got most of the money. $24 billion have gone on Afghan economy since US-led invasion. 24 billion. The country's GDP has gone down and poverty has doubled. So America spends $24 billion in Afghanistan to increase its economy, but poverty has doubled in the last 20 years. $30 billion has been spent on construction projects. Building what? Nothing. Most of the money has gone into the pockets of the politicians, middlemen, and their cronies. $500 billion on interest that the government of Afghanistan will pay for the $2 trillion it borrowed from the World Bank. But right now, Taliban has been told the money is frozen, you can't touch it. But you must pay $500 billion in interest. So a country has been forced to borrow $2 trillion, on which $500 billion is interest only. And that money has been frozen. So what do Taliban do? They probably will have to go back to opium production, right? It is awful. A further $1.4 trillion has been spent and given to those American and British soldiers and NATO soldiers who fought and were injured, became disabled, or have problems. It's to pay for their medical treatment, their rehabilitation, their families, or their compensation. $1.4 trillion has been spent on the veterans of Afghanistan. Now, ladies and gentlemen, tell me, Is the picture in Afghanistan any better? It's bleak. What did America do for the last 20 years on the ground? What does NATO do in the last 20 years on the ground? Well, I'll tell you what they've done. They've bombed, they've captured illegally, they've created incarcerations, renditions, torture chambers, they've created Bagram Air Base, they've created Abu Ghraib in Iraq, they've created Guantanamo Bay in Cuba, they have taken people of Afghanistan and many of them illegally, unethically, for no reason, locked them up for 20 years, 30 years with no trial, no freedom, no access to lawyers, rotting in hellhole in Guantanamo Bay. That's what America has done. It came to build a nation. Has it built a nation? It's destroyed a nation. It's destroyed a nation. According to Amnesty International's report, Amnesty has said American soldiers have perpetrated war crime by killing innocent Afghans, women, pregnant women, children. There are cases, one particular case of a woman who was shot dead by an American soldier, but because there was going to be an investigation, the soldiers at night dug up her body from the grave and took out the bullets from her body so that their bullets cannot be matched with their guns. America and NATO forces are not the only party to have perpetrated war crime in Afghanistan. The Americans who trained the Afghan soldiers who did the same, and Taliban are not innocent. They have done equally barbaric and brutal acts on the ground. Brothers and sisters, in Islam, all of this is haram. Just to make it very clear, all these activities that I've just described would be deemed as haram because they're unethical. Unethical. What is unethical is haram in Islam. What is unjust is haram in Islam. What is abusive is haram in Islam. In Afghanistan, what's happened is Americans and the NATO forces did not realize that their invasion is not going to work. In fact, their invasion is going to create a terrible state in a country where people don't like the Americans, they want to see the back of them. And there is nobody else capable or powerful enough to get rid of the Americans except the Taliban. And funny thing is, and with this I'll inshallah stop, the funny thing is that the 20 years Americans and the NATO forces have spent in bombing the Taliban, if you bomb me and then invite me to a deal, what kind of nonsense is this? You've bombed the life of me, out of me for 20 years. You've bombed the life out of the Taliban for 20 years. You've killed more than 70,000 innocent Afghans in the last 20 years. And now, in the secrecy, in the depth of darkness, in secret meetings in Doha, in Islamabad, in many parts of the world, you sign a deal with the Taliban. If you don't kill any American soldiers, we will leave and you can take the country back. So why did you spend $2 trillion and 20 years and 70,000 people and thousands of American troops and US and British troops in that process? Why did you waste such amount of money and lives and wealth and property in doing what you did for nothing? Absolutely nothing. It's called unethical American foreign policy. Unethical foreign policy that our government in Britain also pursues when it comes to Muslim nations. Brothers and sisters, this awful thing that has happened in Afghanistan, we Muslims should be very clear. We don't support any unethical activities anywhere in the world. Are you clear? Any unethical activities, unjust activities, we don't support. Whether they're done by Americans, whether they're done by British, whether they're done by the Taliban, whether they're done by the Afghan, I don't care who you are. You are unethical, I don't support you. Taliban has done unethical activities. I don't support their activities. Americans have done unethical activities. I don't support American activities. Britain has been party to the unethical activities. I don't support them. Afghan government has done unethical activities. I don't support them either. What we need to do is think, how can we help the ordinary Afghani people so that they can create a country based on freedom, based on fairness, based on justice, based on rule of law, based on people's right to choose who would lead them and who would not lead them. That's what we need to support. Afghan people to free their country from international interference, from all troubles from the outside, so that they can create a peaceful, harmonious, stable, prosperous country. I want to finish again by reminding you, Afghanistan has a massive prize for many people. Do you know Afghanistan has the largest deposit of lithium, natural element that you find, lithium in Afghanistan, the largest amount for the world. If lithium can be extracted from Afghanistan, it can supply 80% of world's lithium need from Afghanistan alone. And do you know what lithium is? Lithium is used for the modern phone batteries, camera batteries, cars that are becoming electrical. It's charged by lithium batteries. Very precious metal. America and the international country, they were not interested in state building. They were not interested in fighting Al-Qaeda. They were not interested in doing anything else. Their eyes were on lithium mines. Their eyes were on natural minerals in Afghanistan. Their eyes were in other aspects in Afghanistan. And what they have learned is they can't take it from the Afghans because Afghans are too strong. They're not going to let people steal their wealth just like that. They allowed the Afghans to steal the wealth from the Americans, yes, they did that. But they would not allow the Americans to steal their own wealth, so they fought back. And when the Taliban walked in, Afghans who have been supporting the Americans all this time just disappeared. An American soldier said, the reason why this happened is because the Afghans had no interest, no willpower, and they did not want to do anything for us anyway. They took our money, took our training, in return did nothing for us. Well, the Americans should have known this long time ago. It should not have been there in the first place. Brothers and sisters, I've spent a lot of time explaining this because you see a lot of media report on a daily basis and you don't know what to make of it. Be very careful. Be very careful. We don't support Taliban if they do wrong. We don't support Taliban if they do wrong. I don't support my father if he does something wrong. You know what Islam says? Stand for justice, even if it means you have to go against your own self. So we don't support Taliban if they are wrong. But they've just come to power. Let's see what they do. If they can prove for themselves that they have good standard, they bring expertise, they bring Islamic scholars, they bring scientists, they bring people of knowledge around to build their country, if they unite their people, if they can end the tribal warfare, if they can stop execution of people, if they can stop the narcotics in the country, we will say, okay, well done Taliban, carry on. But if they can't, we'll oppose them. We don't support Americans because invasion is unethical, unacceptable, especially with the pretext America invaded Afghanistan. We don't support the Afghani government that was corrupt to the core. We support Afghan people in their realization for freedom, rule of law, and justice. May Allah protect us all. May Allah give us and the abilities to be able to support the right cause in the right way, in the right place. Wa akhir da'wana and alhamdulillah rabbil alameen. الحمد لله رب العالمين والعاقبة للمتقين والصلاة والسلام على محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. My brothers and sisters, I'd like to finish my speech today by giving you the true perspective that we should all remember. Allah says in the Quran, قُلِ اللَّهُمَّ مَالِكَ الْمُلْكِ تُؤْتِي الْمُلْكَ مَنْ تَشَاءُ وَتَنْزِعُ الْمُلْكَ مِمَّنْ تَشَاءُ وَتُعِزُّ مَنْ تَشَاءُ وَتُذِلُّ مَنْ تَشَاءُ بِيَدِكَ الْخَيْرُ إِنَّكَ عَلَى كُلِّ شَيْءٍ قَدِيرٌ. Say, قُلِ اللَّهُمَّ مَالِكَ الْمُلْكِ. Say, the Malik al-Mulk, the person, the Lord of the world who's powerful, in his hand lies all power. تُؤْتِي الْمُلْكَ قُلِ اللَّهُمَّ مَالِكَ الْمُلْكِ. Subhanallah. See, I just read it out for one. Subhanallah. Allah says, and He gives power to whom He wills. And He takes away power from whom He wills. And He gives honor to whom He wills. And He takes away honor from whom He wills. Power and honor lies in Allah's hand. When Muslims forget that, they become dishonored. They become disempowered. Today, wherever you look, Muslims have forgotten that power lies in Allah's hand. They're running behind power, but they can never find power. Muslims have forgotten that honor comes from Allah. They're chasing honor, but they cannot find honor anymore. Wherever they go, they only find dishonor. The only honor there is in obeying Allah and His Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. If you lead a good life, if you're a good human being, a decent human being, abide by the principles of Islam, you're good to Allah, you're good to yourself, and you're good to your fellow human beings. In that there is honor. In violence there is no honor. In war there is no honor. In death and destruction there is no honor. In invasion there is no honor. In killing there is no honor. There is no honor in any of that, my brothers and sisters. There is no honor in corruption. There is no honor in bribery. There is no honor in shortcuts for your money and your fame and your fortune. There is no honor in any of those. There is honor in hard work. There is honor in honesty. There is honor in decency. There is honor in being righteous. There is honor that comes from Allah to those people who are good. Muslim communities today are not known as al-Amin and al-Sadiq. They're known as corrupt. They're known as unethical. They're known as disunited. They're known as violent. They're known as people who have no rule of law. They're known as people who are ruled by dictators and despots. This has to be reversed. We need to change that. And alhamdulillah, you and I, living in the UK, we have the greatest opportunity to show the world what Islam truly is. Because in our country, we've got rule of law. In our country, we've got freedom. In our country, we've got justice. As Muslims, we should be able to demonstrate the values of Islam in such an environment more than the Muslims in their own countries, where there is no rule of law, there is no freedom, there is no justice. Remember, you are an ambassador of Allah in this country. You are an ambassador of Islam in this country. Your behavior, your talk, your mannerism, your analysis, your thinking, your writing, your expressions, all of them represent Islam. And if you represent Islam in a miserable way, don't be surprised to see reaction from your non-Muslim friends and your neighbors equally in a bad way. We represent Islam, and we must represent it good. And we represent Islam through our behavior, our character, and our beings. And finally, we represent Islam by being knowledgeable about our faith. Be knowledgeable about your faith. Remember, knowledge and wisdom comes from Allah. Honor and power comes from Allah. You can't get it unless you work hard. So, to finish off, remember, قل اللهم مالك الملك تؤتي الملك من تشاء وتنزع الملك ممن تشاء وتعز من تشاء وتذل من تشاء بيدك الخير إنك على كل شيء قدير. Allah is the one who is the powerful, the owner of power, and we ask Him to honor us with power when we deserve power. We ask Allah to give us honor when we have done our bit to deserve honor. We ask Allah to strengthen us in our iman. Ya Arhamar Rahimin, strengthen us in our iman, Ya Allah. Strengthen us in our iman, Ya Allah. Strengthen us in our iman, Ya Allah. Strengthen us in our knowledge, Ya Allah. Strengthen us in our knowledge, Ya Allah. Strengthen us in our tawakkul, Ya Allah. Strengthen us in our unity, Ya Allah. Strengthen us as a community, Ya Allah. Ya Arhamar Rahimin, Ya Akramul Akramin. Wherever there are troubles, remove the troubles from the world, Ya Allah. We ask you to remove the troubles in Afghanistan, Ya Allah. Give my brothers and sisters in Afghanistan the strength, the stamina, the iman and the knowledge to be able to stand to build their own countries, Ya Allah. Ya Arhamar Rahimin, give them the strength and the stamina to work hard to build their own country, Ya Allah. Give them the strength and the unity to be together to build their own country, Ya Allah. To remove from them fitna, Ya Allah. To remove from them greed, Ya Allah. To remove from them corruption, Ya Allah. Ya Arhamar Rahimin, we ask you to unite my brothers and sisters in Afghanistan, Ya Allah. We ask you to unite our brothers and sisters in Afghanistan, Ya Allah. Remove the fitna from them, Ya Allah. Unite them, Ya Allah. Ya Arhamar Rahimin, Ya Akramul Akramin. We ask you to protect our children, Ya Allah. Protect our children, Ya Allah. Protect our children, Ya Allah. Guide them to your path, Ya Allah. And keep them in your guidance, Ya Allah. Make them the leaders of tomorrow, Ya Allah. Give them the best of knowledge, Ya Allah. Give them the best of examples, Ya Allah. And then bestow upon them the best of character, Ya Allah. Ya Arhamar Rahimin, protect us from the illnesses and the diseases that we have around us, Ya Allah. Especially the COVID-19, the coronavirus. Ya Allah, free us from this virus, Ya Allah. Allahumma inni a'udhu bika min al-barasi wal-junun والجزام من سيء الاسقام. يا ارحم الراحمين يا رب الناس اذهب الباس واشفي انت الشافي لا شفاء الا شفاء لا يغادر سقما. يا ارحم الراحمين, those who passed away from amongst us, we ask you to have mercy on their souls, Ya Allah. Have mercy on their souls, Ya Allah. Have mercy on their souls, Ya Allah. Forgive them, Ya Allah. Forgive them, Ya Allah, and give them the highest of paradise, Ya Allah. And if, for those of us who have our parents alive, give them long life, Ya Allah. Give them good health, Ya Allah. Protect our families and our neighborhoods, Ya Allah. Ya Rahimin, restore peace and stability in our society, Ya Allah. Restore peace and stability in our society, Ya Allah. Restore peace and stability in the world, Ya Allah. Allahumma anta as-salam wa minka as-salam. Tabarak Rabbana wa ta'alayta ya dhal jalali wal ikram. ربنا تقبل منا انك انت السميع العليم وتب علينا يا مولانا انك انت التواب الرحيم. ان الله يأمر بالعدل والاحسان وايتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون. فاذكروني اذكركم واشكروا لي ولا تكفرون والله يعلم